Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to Waiting with Love. As always, this is a fellowship style space for people navigating the messy in between that comes with waiting. Whether you're waiting for a child, as we are, or waiting for something else, we want you to know that you don't have to wait without hope, and you certainly don't have to wait alone.
This is especially true when the waiting has lasted longer, hurt more, or changed you more than you expected. If you've ever felt stuck in the middle of something you desperately wanted, you are in the right place.
Thank you for being here.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I cannot believe we're in May now. I turned 40 in a few weeks. Um, so, speaking of waiting, I want to wait for that. I'll wait as long as it takes to become 40. Hopefully, wait forever and just stay forever 39. Anyway, so this week we're going to talk about something a little bit more specifically. So, one of the constant themes we've been discussing really since day one of this podcast is the struggle of waiting to have a baby or child, but also living your life, and balancing all of that. And as we discussed, obviously the surrogacy process or the adoption process or just fertility in general for anybody is unpredictable. You don't know when it's going to work or when it's going to happen, and there's financial and logistical aspects that are also unpredictable as a result. Costs, you don't know when you're going to be spending your money on a pregnancy or a potential baby. How much should you save? How much should you spend? How do you balance living your life? But also, we're planning to grow our family at some point. So, this week we're going to talk about a specific example of that that's a little bit more fun as we approach the summer and summer vacations. And that's travel, that's holidays, that's vacation themselves. Most people who are not doing this plan their travel around the calendars, right? If they already have kids, we're going to go away in the summer or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, a long school break. Or if you don't have kids, you plan around your PTO and things like that. If you're a skier, we're going to go somewhere in the winter. All that good stuff. We're planning travel, and people like us are planning travel and vacations, kind of not knowing what our long-term timeline is, right? So we know we're not having a baby next month, for example, but what we don't know is we might have a very large payment in a couple months if things work out, right? So it's that kind of tension we have to battle anytime we think about going away. So we understand this is a privileged problem, the fact that we can do a surrogacy and also go on vacation at the same time, so poor us. But it's still an emotional, logistical challenge, especially when the pressure is live your life and hopefully it happens one day, but you should continue living your life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Man, what do you think? Any initial thoughts?
I think it's a great topic. I think it's timely given that, in the South, school will be wrapping up in the next couple of weeks. Up here, school will be in for a little bit longer, but I like the way that you sort of framed that most people plan their travel calendar around seasons or things that they like to do on vacation, like the example you gave, skiing, or if you already have kids, ahead of time when their winter break is going to be, when their spring break is going to be, the times that they're going to be off of school. But when you're going through a journey like ours, your timing is a lot in other people's hands, which I think the point that you're making, Andrew, makes it a little bit more challenging if you're privileged enough, as we are, to be able to travel during this period of waiting.
And before we dive in, just a little self promo. As a lot of you know, I also have my travel blog and my side travel business. So obviously, travel is something I'm very passionate about. Outandabroad.com if you're interested. Anyway, put in the show notes. Anyway, so back to this. I'm sorry, everyone. Yeah, and so the thing is, again, we know we're not having kids tomorrow. If you are going through IVF or surrogacy process, adoption's a little different, so let's stick with surrogacy or IVF for today. Even though adoption's actually not that different, but let's just keep it what we're focused on our own journey. If we have a successful embryo transfer, for example, in June, let's just throw that out there. That starts the clock of us having a baby, which means we'd have a baby next spring. Okay, so we can go away, in theory, anytime before next spring. But what makes it complicated is, and again, every surrogacy organization or IVF organization is probably different, But the way payments work for us is different milestones during the pregnancy costs a chunk of money. So we're kind of navigating a few things here, not just when is baby coming, but also when are some very large, like tens of thousands of dollars, payments happening. And that's something we just don't know until a successful embryo transfer happens, which you don't know when that's going to happen potentially, right? So do you book things for so for this example, let's say we have an embryo transfer in June. Do we start booking things in the fall and the spring based on maybe it succeeds, maybe it doesn't succeed? I mean, those are the kinds of things we have to kind of wrestle.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, because the timing of when the milestone payments are not known, that it makes it somewhat easier because we at least know the amount. And so by being able to separate in sort of our savings account what has been put aside for the next milestone payment makes the idea of travel a little bit easier. And I think the way that our stage gate payments are set up, there's a payment in about the middle of the first trimester, and then there's another payment in about the middle of the second trimester. And as I sort of think forward in this journey, I think that between those two milestone payments would be the most logical time to potentially travel, because you have made the first milestone payment, you know you have another one coming up, but you would also be talking about traveling in a period at which time, if there was a problem, we certainly wouldn't be needed. We would be devastated, and we would be emotionally impacted if there was a problem, but that window is early enough in a pregnancy that either the pregnancy is going to continue to a point where it's viable outside of the surrogate, or it's not going to continue at all. So as I think about sort of forward planning travel, I would think that for anyone in a similar situation as us, if you're looking at, a baby moon or something like that, you would probably be considering in the second trimester, and even at that, whether it was earlier or later in the second trimester, may impact your decision on where to go. I mean, we've spoken about on this pod before about last year we went to Africa, and at that time we had no news, and I don't know that if we were in our second trimester, we would be thinking about going to South Africa.
We were still trying to pay for that trip. No, just kidding. That was very expensive. But actually, that we'll talk about that in a minute, actually, because that trip there was news when we went on that trip, actually. Let's put a pin on that. We'll come back to that, though, because I think we're going to talk about windows and things like that in just a moment. I do want to take a pause for a second. If you're somebody who's in this process right now, who is not planning on going on vacation, because vacations are just not something you care about that much, just insert expensive purchase here. It doesn't have to be vacation, right? It could be a home renovation. Like, should we do this big renovation? We might have a baby one day. Should we, it could be anything. A renovation, a new car, whatever. Insert big ticket price thing here. We're just focusing on vacation today. That's what we like to do with our, extra finances. Cool. So actually, let's get into what I was just talking about, or you were just talking about, which is windows. Because there's a few different, and I don't mean like windows on a house. I mean like travel windows or timeline windows. There's a few things we need to consider. It's not just finances. And this is something we also talked about on previous pods as well. But it's also time off, right? So if you go on vacation, if you go on PTO, you're using days. And those are days you may not be able to use later if you get pregnant, right? So, and this is something I don't want to get too far into the rabbit hole today because that's the focus on today, but that's one of those things where it depends on the company you work for and how progressive they are. We're not females. We don't know how much leave we get, so PTO is something we may want to hold on to and use it later kind of thing. So these are kinds of the different logistics that we have to think about. And one of the things we've done over the last 2 years, when we have actually traveled quite a bit, is identify windows when we could travel. So, Matt, what do I mean by that, by windows to travel?
Yeah, I think there's two elements to windows that we can travel. One is what I was mentioning before, are windows in which or you're not expecting anything major is going to happen, or your presence, whether you're in the United States or elsewhere in the world, isn't going to make a difference. You're not going to urgently need to get back for something. But I think the second one, which is probably the more real one for us at this time, is traveling during windows that minimize the amount of PTO that we need to take. And so the last couple of vacations that we've taken, we've tried to go away over Thanksgiving or over Christmas, where there's already a natural time off from work, to preserve, to your point, those PTO days, so that should we need them later in the year to potentially extend any parental leave or to cover time that we need to be preparing to bring baby home. And I think that from a timing window perspective, the way that we've sort of contemplated time off and travel over the past couple of years is, as we approach the end of the year and PTO balances are about to reset, then we maybe think about traveling a little bit more. And that was certainly the case last year. We did a lot of our travel last year in the last couple of months of the year.
Yeah, actually, let me give you all an example of this, just so you can kind of see like what we had to think about. So, our foreign exchange student, the boy, went home June of 2025. Oh my goodness, almost a year ago. Went home back to France. So before he left, so like actually probably around this time, we started talking to him about when we can go visit him and meet his family. That is something we wanted to do before baby arrives, because we know when baby arrives, going overseas is not going to be very feasible for a while. But because he became a son to us, and because we want meeting his family and seeing where he's from, we knew it was important to him and us. It's something we wanted to prioritize before baby was due. Based on where we were with our surrogacy agency and where we were in the process, we knew the holidays, Christmas, of 2025 was possible for this. We knew there would be there's no risk, financial risk, logistical risk. We knew that was a moment we can go to France and see him and meet his family. So we talked to him about it. We were honest with him about it. Like, this is important to us. We know it's important to you. We have this window. We know we're not going to have to cancel it or anything like that. And we did it. It was a wonderful trip. There was no risk because we were far enough. We knew where the window was. We knew there was no chance for a pregnancy or even a payment up until that point. So we did it then. We were able to check that important trip off. So that's an example of a window that we identified and we used it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that obviously the closer that you get to certain milestones happening or not happening, the more certainty that you're able to have in these trips. And if I think back to our trip to Africa last year, was a huge time commitment, a huge financial commitment, was also just a lot. It was fantastic. It was a once in a lifetime trip, but it was a lot. And I think that we had actually paid very close attention to cancellation policies for that trip, particularly the safari portion, which had the most stringent cancellation policy. And I remember we had actually put a date on our calendar of, if we don't have certain news of a certain type by this date, then we're absolutely going on this trip. And it turned out we didn't have that news by that date, and so we went on that trip. But it brings me to a question, Andrew, which is, what does it feel like to not have a clear before and after timeline when you're thinking about travel and going through this process simultaneously?
Well, that's a good question. I think travel itself, when you book a trip through me or somebody else, you're assuming a stable future that you understand, You assume you're still going to be employed, right? Most likely, because you can't go, you need the income. You assume world events aren't going to change, which is an interesting assumption this day and age with our administration. You assume your family dynamics are going to stay the same. And we can't operate like that. And we're far enough along. We've been honest with you all about where we are in the process, where we could have a surrogate at any moment, kind of thing, and a successful embryo transfer at any moment. We can't we really can't book anything that we can't cancel, at least unless it's the very short term. So that's what we're assuming, basically. It's almost like when we book a trip right now, to answer your question, we're really just we're booking a placeholder that we may or may not go on. So we book it, we hold the rooms, we ensure we don't book anything that's non-refundable, right? We hold a week or a few days or a long weekend, whatever it is, not too far out, especially where we are right now in the process, not too far out just in case, but that we can easily cancel or keep the costs manageable, that even if we end up going, because you know what, maybe it'll be our baby moon or a last trip kind of thing, it won't be a fortune, we can do it, we can make it work. But that's what we're doing right now. And, that's a short term. And in the long term, what you could do is if you want to plan something more exciting, like an Africa trip, because maybe there's not going to be news by then, or you have bad news by then, or a setback by then, yeah, book something that's far out, got no money down, or refundable. Just make sure, as you said, you have that date in your calendar, because that's kind of how we operate right now. Any trip we book is a placeholder.
Yeah, I think it's a placeholder, but it's also just emotionally, mentally, because as we talked about last week, this journey is draining in and of itself. I think it also helps just to have something on the calendar, because in the same breath as we're saying it's a placeholder and we can cancel it if we need to, on the other side of that coin is we're also going until we're not going. And so it is something to look forward to, and I think mentally that helps lift the load a little bit that you're carrying, because you, at least for us, because we like to travel, we like to go to new places occasionally, we really like to go back to places we've already been. That's a whole other story, but I think that it helps in having something to look forward to. And if you flip the script a little bit, even on if you're looking forward to going on this vacation, I mean, as we've talked about time and time again, we've been waiting for a baby for the last 10 years. There is nothing I wouldn't want more than to cancel a trip because there's a baby on the way.
Right, exactly. And, that's kind of been our approach to, again, 10 years trying to have a baby, but the last 2.5 we've been in the current surrogacy process, so it's been a little more like not stop and start or different processes. We kind of know what we've signed up for now for the last few years. That's exactly what we've been doing, is basically planning flexible trips that we can cancel, but we could also go on them. And as a result, as we've discussed a little bit, when the boy left us last summer, we were very upset about that. And we've been very, one benefit, I hate to use that, I'll use that word, one benefit of some of the setbacks and delays we've had in the surrogacy process is we've now been able to see the boy twice since he left.
Yeah.
One time in his home in France and one time for your birthday in Italy, right? So.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's absolutely correct. And I think that, we're now looking at trips not only from a refundable perspective, but also I want to sort of phrase it as an exit strategy. I mean, Africa was booked because we had found a great redemption, and at the time we didn't know whether or not we were going to be able to go. If there was good news, we ended up getting bad news at the time, and it was a bit of an exit strategy. It was a bit of an escape for us. And I can think of times along this journey that we've been away when we were expecting news, and sometimes that has played into our strategy of, we know that we're going to get news during this period that we're planning on being away. Would I want to be wherever I am, whether I get good news or bad news? And if the answer is yes to that, then it's a worthwhile thing to consider.
Yeah. So do we want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit to kind of fun stuff and talk about strategies and tips and things to consider if you're going to book travel?
Yeah.
Cool.
You're the travel maestro.
I am the travel maestro. Andrew Reiser, travel. Luxury travel. Some tips, to consider if you're booking travel when you don't know what your future is going to look like. And again, this could be anybody. You don't even have to be trying to have a baby right now. If you're not sure about your career, your job, the economy's kind of at the moment. What are things you can consider that you can kind of get out of? First thing I would again, and let's focus again on our process or people who are like us, but this could be for anyone. If you're not sure what the future looks like, and again, if you're people like us, if you don't know when you're going to be pregnant, when you get these massive payments, spend a few extra dollars to book something you can cancel. This is not a time to go on kayak.com or booking.com and saving $30 a night to book something that's non-refundable. It's just, if this, because, yeah, it looks great when you're first seeing it, how much cheaper it looks over 7 days, $30, it's a few $100s, right? But again, it's kind of nice, and we've had a few close calls, like Africa, that we could just cancel it and get it all back.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one is, to your point, like going to Expedia or travel.com, any of these sites that make you pay up front. Number one, you're fronting the cash up front, but that you also lose the ability to cancel versus paying a few extra dollars and going to Marriott's website and booking directly. In many cases, you can cancel like up to a few days, sometimes even the day of. Especially if you're really uncertain as to whether or not you'll be able to go.
And this is why I'm never going to hire Matt to be my marketing person for my travel industry, my travel agency, because you shouldn't go on Marriott.com. You should call me because I could book it for the same price and get you perks. So, Matt, you're not helping. This is how we pay for our vacations, all right? So you're not helping the situation here. But that's the thing, right? Another suggestion I would have is when you're booking airlines. Now, booking refundable airlines is usually dramatically more expensive. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's like $50 more. It's usually like if you go on United or Delta.com, it's usually like several $100s to book something that's refundable. I understand if you don't want to do that, but what you could do and what you could think about is booking tickets on airlines that may not be refundable when it comes to cash, but most now, unless you're booking basic economy or like a Spirit or kind of like a budget airline, most the big three for the United States, which is Delta, United, American, let's just say, if you book the regular rate, which most people do, because most people don't want to do basic economy, you do get travel credit if you cancel, which means if you ever plan on flying United, Delta, or American again, you're fine. Basically, you'll just use it for then. So that's another just fairly easy tip you could do is book an airline that might not be a refundable fare, but at least a travel credit fare, which is most fares. And then as long as you plan on flying them again, you're in good hands. So
and I think that to that point, when you're thinking about booking a trip and you're in this scenario, yes, by booking on American or Delta or United, you're committing to the travel credit. But I also think that mentally it helps if you're telling yourself, I may have to cancel this trip, but I am going to go on a trip at some point with that same credit.
Yeah, and then the other thing I'd say with just to keep on flights for a second is, hotels are easier, especially if you book direct or through me or somebody like me. You can book those, no money down, and cancel them whenever, and that's it. It's done. So, honestly, what I sometimes tell my clients is if you're even like 60, 70% sure you're going to go, book it. It doesn't cost anything. Book it. Hold the dates. Hold the rate. You're just locking a rate. It's a placeholder, as we talked about a few minutes ago. Flights, I would wait till you're more sure you're going to go. That's all. Because, again, Matt, you and I travel a lot. So even if we don't go on a vacation in July, by September we're going somewhere else, even if it's to visit family or something like that. So it's easier for us. But for those of you who don't travel very often, right, I wouldn't commit to flights until you're fairly sure you're going. So if you're trying to have a baby, for example, and you haven't had a successful embryo transfer, and let's just say it's June, and the trip you're eyeing is in August, September, you could probably go ahead and book the flights. If the trip's in January, maybe hold off for a little bit. Book the hotel, hold the rooms in January, but maybe wait till October, November until you book the flights. Other things to consider.
So these days, when you think about our travel and any potential travel coming up, what are you prioritizing? Ease, flexibility, experience, all of the above, none of the above?
That's a good question. Now, again, you and I are pretty privileged and have done a lot of traveling the last few years. So you and I are now kind of prioritizing saving a little bit more for a variety of reasons. So right now, I'm thinking mostly about flexibility, something we can cancel, obviously. Short distance quality, so spending less on flights or going overseas, like we've been doing a lot of, and going more local, but staying somewhere nice, for example. So I'd rather instead of using money for flights, rather use the money and stay somewhere more local that's expensive. But again, what's nice about hotels, as we've just been talking about, is you can cancel them. So is it more fun going to the Maldives or Bora Bora than Boston? Sure. But there's some very nice hotels in Boston, and those are things we can cancel last minute. Doesn't require flights. Doesn't require as many nights for the dogs, the board, or have our sitters watch. So I think right now, again, we're trying to save some money right now for a variety of reasons. I'm thinking mostly flexibility, quality over distance, and using money for the stay versus the actual logistics of travel.
Agreed. I think we're almost at time. I just wanted to touch on, and you brought it up at the top, but I'd like to just remind everyone listening that this episode is really, we've talked a lot about travel because it's something that we love to do, but this isn't entirely about travel. It's not a travel episode. It's about control and uncertainty. And I think to your point earlier, Andrew, like if travel isn't your thing, this could be a major purchase. It could be a home renovation. It could be a camper that, maybe you're really thinking ahead and you want to take baby when baby arrives and grows up a little bit more camping. It could be a boat. It could be anything. And I think that it's just this uncertainty that we live in that is amplified by the financial pressures of the process that we're going through.
So, yeah, let's give an example of that. So again, travel is something we love. We like doing it. It's a priority of ours. It's where we want to spend some of our disposable income. Home renovations, especially because we did build a new home a couple years ago, is not as high on the priority. So an example of this, where we didn't do this because we are choosing to save money or travel instead, is we have 3 dogs. And our entire upstairs of the house, where all the bedrooms are, is carpeted. And we have 3 dogs. So our carpet is basically 90% piss, vomit, hair. We really want to get rid of the carpet. That was a mistake. Putting carpet upstairs. We should have used the same flooring as we did downstairs, and we didn't, and got area rugs for the beds. So we actually priced what that would cost, and we got the number, and we decided as much as that would be great, that's not where we want to spend our disposable income right now. And for the same money, we decided, well, Matt didn't know this, but we decided to go to Italy for his 40th birthday and surprise him with the boy. And now we have probably the best trip we've ever taken. A week with the boy in Italy, where we had wonderful moments with him forever. The surprise for you. And again, do I wish we had a baby right now? Yes, but we also just went on the best vacation we've ever been on, right? So, and again, sorry.
You left out something really important.
What's that?
You're also the proud owner of a brand new carpet cleaner.
We did. We purchased a carpet cleaner. See, marriage is about compromise. Instead of new floors, we got a carpet cleaner and a trip to Italy. There you go, everyone. Moral of the story. On that note, Matt, I think we've covered it all. The point, as we were just saying, is not about vacation per se. It's about, because of this process, of the unknown of this process, when big payments are due, when when baby comes, when you need to take time off, and things like that. It's just thinking about how to budget properly so you're saving, spending where you want to spend. For us, it's travel. And if it is travel for you, thinking about different windows and where you can make travel work, and think about ways to make it less risky with flexibility and refundability.
And reach out to Andrew if you need travel bookings.
Reach out. Free perks. You're missing out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you for being here. If this episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to know that they're not alone.
You can find more about us and this community at www.waitingwithlove.com.
And links to our socials, as always, are in the show notes.
Until next time, keep waiting with love.